Hi there. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today for part three of our four-part webinar series, Mastering Cannabis Operations. Today, we are going to be discussing compliance. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we do not foresee having time at the end of today's session for questions, but I did want to ask that if you have questions to please submit those to insider@silverleafcbc.com and we will respond to you as quickly as possible. We are recording this session and we'll send it to you later this afternoon via email, just in case you want to look it over again. With that being said, I am going to hand it over to today's presenters, Jennifer Phoenix and Sarah Silver.
I'm Sara Silver, and I'm the Director of Horticultural Solutions at Palacio. We developed the Silverleaf platform several years ago when we did found our first customer in the cannabis space, and we've been working on that platform for many years. I have about 30 years of ERP experience and maybe 8 or 9 years experience in the cannabis space. Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Phoenix. I am the consulting manager for our implementation team that helps to implement and support our clients who are on Business Central with our Silverleaf add-ons for the cannabis industry. I have also been in the space now for quite some time. I think I'm on 20 years on NAV myself. And then, yeah, riding right along with Sarah on this cannabis journey for the last near decade. We're coming up on
near decade, and it is a journey, that is for sure.
Isn't it though?
Oh, awesome. So let's first talk about Silverleaf before we get into the features. And if you've heard this webinar, if you've heard this webinar already, then fast forward if you're watching the recording, because we mention this every time. Silverleaf is an extension to Microsoft Business Central to support the cannabis industry. Business Central is part of the Microsoft Dynamics family. It's an ERP solution, enterprise resource planning solution, which will run ERP systems are for all kinds of manufacturing and distribution companies, and Business Central is a premier solution in this space. There's hundreds of thousands of users around the world that use Business Central, and it integrates with the whole Microsoft suite of Microsoft Office and the Power Platform, et cetera. We, as I mentioned at the beginning, developed the Silverleaf platform years ago to extend Business Central, formerly called NAV, to serve the cannabis industry. So our solution sits right inside Business Central. Once I hop in the demo, you won't be able to tell where Business Central ends and Silverleaf begins. And ideally, we're adding cannabis functionality to an already robust ERP solution, so you get the best of both worlds. As we said, we've been working more than 8 years serving the cannabis industry. We work with many multi-state operators. We share with them industry best practices. We're validated with metric in 15 states. I think it's actually 16 or 17. We got a few more in the past few weeks. And we have really Silverleaf users all around the country now. Okay, so these are the features of our compliance solution that we're going to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'll start with license tracking. So I'm just going to hop over to the demo right away. I'm in Business Central or Silverleaf right now. And I want to first talk about licenses. As you must, as cannabis operators, you need to track the licenses of your customers, your locations, your vendors, so that you can make sure you're dealing with companies that meet the regulatory requirements in your state, and that you have proof that you're doing your best due diligence in managing those licenses. So first, I'm going to show you on our location card how you can track your own licenses. You'll have different licenses for each of your facilities. Here, for example, I've got all these different warehouses and grow facilities. I'm going to go ahead and open my distribution location, one of my warehouses, and I can come up under the related button, location, and choose licenses. So here you can see my location's license. Here's the license number, the type of license it is. In my sample world, I'm just saying it's a cannabis license or not. Some states you do separate your adult use versus your medical licenses. And so we could have multiple licenses if this location had both an adult use and med. I'm just saying cannabis to make things simple today. And I've given it an expiration date. Similarly, I can track licenses on customers or vendors, as I mentioned earlier, I should say, and vendors. If I go ahead and open up my customer, Sweet Nectar, who I tend to work with a lot, and come look at their licenses, here we can see their license number and their expiration date. On my items, I then have a setting of whether or not a license is required and which license is necessary. So let's just pop open an item real quickly. And we'll look at one of my finished goods that I sell. So I'm going to 1 gram jars of flour. And you'll notice in my cannabis tab, when it pops up, here we've said that a license is required and it must be the cannabis type license. If your state separates your inventory by medical products versus adult use products, then you could choose which license this product requires. So a customer with adult use can only buy the adult use items, and customers with medical license can only buy the medical products. So we've got that set right there. Now, if I was selling something like t-shirts or our general merchandise sort of things, then we could turn off license type required on those, and you can sell those to anyone. So that's just a quick look into our licenses and permits, which is kind of our, let's call that our warm-up round for our compliance. Let's hop back into the slides and see what's next. Next is our quality control module. This is probably one of the biggest adds to the Business Central platform that we've done. With our solution, you'll be able to track tests that you want to run for your products. You can quarantine products and then save the results of any tested product indefinitely. So let's go ahead and hop in and take a look at that. I'm going to go back to the demo. And I'm going to quickly change my role center so that I'm a QC admin, so that we can see what a quality control person's role center looks like. Notice before I was a salesperson and I had sales related tasks on my home screen. Now I'm in QC and I have more quality related things. Let's go ahead and go to administration and look at the QC tests. So I'm going to open, I've got all these different tests that I've set up. And one of them is, let's just go ahead and open one of these tests. So we'll go to the CBD test, total CBD. So here I've said I want to test total CBD. And if I go to my result list, my result test results, here I can see what results are allowed for this item, or this test, I'm sorry. So my total CBD test, I've said I just need a range of what the total CBD is. Anything from 0 to 100 is passing. So we don't care if it's what number it is in there, it's going to be passing. We might have other tests where we have options of, for example, here I've got some options of just pass, fail, or we might have different decimal ranges. My tests tend to be rather simplistic for the sake of demo purposes. So I can create all the tests that we want to run on products in general, and then I can assign those tests to what are called QC groups. Oops, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. I can assign these tests to QC groups. So if I open up this group called Standard Flower and Trim Testing, here we can see all the tests that are part of that group. So these are the different tests: total THC, CBD, a formula for total cannabinoids. Here I've got a test that just says QC results attached. You might get 100 tests back from the lab on any product, excuse me, but you might not want to track that level of detail of tests in the system. So you would be able to attach a PDF of the results from the lab, and then this is just a pass-fail, meaning yes, I attach them to make sure your users have attached the results. So now I can take this test group and assign it to any items that are appropriate for that. So let's go back to, we'll go to a different item just so you can see a different item card. We'll go to here, this bulk trim that we might purchase. And we've assigned in the QC section down here at the bottom that this item gets the standard flower and trim testing. So here's that QC group assigned to it. And what's interesting is I can take one of these results. Maybe for this one product, I want to make sure that the total THC has a minimum base of 10% or something like that. So you might have some products that might be a premium product and you can override what the allowable results are. So I could choose this total THC and change the range on this instead of 0 to 100, 10 to 100 if I wanted to. So you can override at the item level. We like to talk about managing by exception. You don't want to manage every single detail. So you can assign the group to the items and then go find the exceptions and override the group. I want to go to another item and show you something that I think is really an awesome feature, if allowable in your state, and that is our feature called inheritance. So here I've got a vape cartridge, and this cartridge, if I scroll down, there we go, you'll notice it doesn't have a QC group assigned to it. In my state, I'm allowed to test the distillate that is filled in the cartridge, and I don't have to retest the finished good. If you can enjoy that situation, you'll notice here that I've got what I call a QC source item. So basically, I've said that whenever I fill a cartridge, inherit the QC results of the batch of distillate that went into that batch of cartridges. So we can inherit the results of a component item that went into our finished good. And then we'll be able to track those results with the finished good as well. We could add a test group to the cartridge also, and we could inherit as well as then have other testing. Maybe we want to just have a visual inspection of the cartridges to make sure there's no leaking. So we can inherit the distillate results as well as have our own tests assigned to the vape cartridge. Then I would just assign another QC group right here. The final thing I'd like to show you on our QC is how we can, well, actually, I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to filter a list of results. Maybe I want to find a product that meets a certain minimum requirements because I'm going to do an extraction. I want to make sure I get the good stuff for that extraction. I can pull up my lot list, and I can come into the quality control section and do what's called apply QC filter. So I can choose an item number. So we'll choose that bulk product that we bought. Whoops, too many zeros. Here we go. We'll choose this bulk trim. And we can say we want to find everything where our CBD content is greater than 12. And again, I just make stuff up so I can get some good results. And I happen to know that my data shows that. So now it's returned to me the lots that have CBD greater than 12, and that's all it's returned. And notice for each of these batches, as I click, I can see what the results were for those lab tests that we tested on that item. So that's kind of exciting. Then when we go to pick for this production process, our production manager can tell the pickers which batch they want them to choose. I'd like to spend a moment talking about the quarantine process. Let's go ahead and open an item. I'm going to open, well, we can go back to that raw O2 item. And here you'll see that we have on hand inventory of 37,506 grams of the product. 23,886 are available, meaning they've passed QC. And in fact, if I click on that number, I can see all the batches and the QC results associated with it. So I could print a C of A from here. I could get right down to the details of that batch. If I click on unavailable, these are the batches that either haven't passed inventory, haven't passed inspection, or have failed. Let me say that again. Here, the QC unavailable is the total quantity that either hasn't been tested or has failed inspection. I think all of mine haven't been tested yet, but if it had failed, I would see the failing results here on the right. Okay, Jennifer, do you have anything to add about quarantining? Have you, any of your customers had experience, positive results from having quarantined and protected themselves from disaster?
Oh, yes. And, we have different people who will set up different rules in the system depending on how they want to handle inventory that either has not yet passed testing, if they're waiting for results. We have customers who may manufacture goods and then they will output everything into a quarantine location what that does is it separates the inventory. So even though we're looking here at the item card and saying, okay, here's our QC unavailable inventory like Sarah just showed, we can even further isolate that inventory, move it into what we call a quarantine location. So that way when somebody's creating a sales order, they don't even have the opportunity to see that inventory as being available to them. And then we have different filtered views we can create on that. Or if we send something out for testing and we get results back and say, hey, this lot, this either needs to do additional testing, needs to go through remediation, etc. We can isolate that inventory by moving that into a quarantine location and really kind of getting it out of the view of the mainstream inventory. And therefore, people aren't having to pick through the lots or the tags that have passed testing. And it makes things just a lot easier and a smoother flow for everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. We could spend hours on QC. That module has a lot of meat to it, so we'd be happy to show you that in more detail. So next, let's talk about our chain of custody. Obviously, in a regulated industry like cannabis, we need to keep our eye on the product and make sure we know where it is at all time. And you saw a little bit with the inventory of how we know which lots, we talked about which locations, if they've passed, we could track it down to the bin. Once your inventory leaves with your driver, you also need to track it. So I'm going to show you our delivery and cash tracking features. So let me switch back to the sales order processor. Okay. That'll flip over. And I think in a prior webinar, we talked about sales. Again, we could spend a lot of time on the sales process, so I'm not going to go through all that right now, but I am going to show you a sales order that we're ready to ship and pick. So here's a sales order for Sweet Nectar, my buddies, for, let's see, 5 vape cartridges of Afghan Kush, and you'll notice the excise tax added in. That's something else we can show you. I think we did that in our first webinar. We talked about that. So this is a sales order that's already been picked. We've already assigned the tags that are going to go out on this item. So in other words, our dispatch person has chosen the tags that are going to go with it. And we're just ready to go ahead and do the shipment now. So I'm going to go ahead and go into our delivery tracking. Now we do have a screen where you could do a whole batch of these. So if you're doing, your driver's going to territory A and you want to pull all the orders that are due to be delivered in the next 3 days for territory A, then you can do that. But I'm going to do just this one. So I'm going to create a delivery tracking entry. I'm going to choose who our driver is. And these, again, this is part of our licensing module. We set up Brian's license information. And Brian is our driver, and he's now going to sign for this. I like to say it's easier to do that on a tablet than with my mouse. And we'll put Brian's name in here of who our driver is. And now Brian is going to accept it. At this point, we're going to relieve our inventory, and it's in this in-transit mode as it's being driven to our customer. Brian's going to leave. He's going to take his tablet with internet access on it, and he's going to pop up Silverleaf on his tablet. And his role center, his homepage is going to show the orders he's delivering today, or what he's responsible for. He'll pop up this order, and now he's meeting with the customer, and he's ready to hand off the product. So he's going to create a new delivery tracking entry, and his customer now is going to sign for it. So let's have Jack sign for it. We'll just type J for Jack and put in Jack's name. Jack at this point can accept the delivery in full by completing the delivery, or he could adjust the quantity. Maybe in the end he only wanted 4 and not 5, or he could reject the whole thing. If we're in a big state and Brian's driving and passing it off to another driver who works for our company, then we could just do a transfer. I'm going to go ahead and just complete it now so you can see the cash on the flip side back. So at this point, we created an invoice for Jack, and I can go ahead and open that. Brian could open this right on his tablet. And we'll assume Jack's paying this invoice with cash right now, but maybe he's going to pay something from 2 weeks ago. Maybe we give him terms and we're going to get a different order. Brian could pull up that invoice, whatever Jack's paying. So Jack's going to pay us $82.55 for this invoice. So now Brian can come back into the cash tracking and he can create a cash delivery entry. And again, he's still Brian. Maybe we had a different driver go get the money. Brian's going to sign for the cash. I did that a little better that time. And we'll put Brian's name on here. And we're going to identify what kind of payment he gave us. And we'll put in the amount. And now at this point, Brian can accept the delivery. If I hit accept delivery and send, it's going to send an email to Jack of a receipt. But since I don't have Jack's email address set up, I made that up. We'll just go ahead and hit accept. So now Brian has the money. He's driving back to headquarters. And when accounting gets the money, they'll create an entry and accept it. And so we always know who has the money. So that's a little bit about our delivery tracking. There is one thing I neglected to show you when I was on the, I want to talk for a minute about the manifest that's created. When I shipped that sales order or created that first delivery tracking entry, it created a manifest, and I can go back and pull that up in the archive. So I'm going to show you that real quickly. Let's sort this the opposite direction. Okay, so here, this was the manifest that we just created when we shipped that out. And at the time Brian accepted the delivery of the product, at the time Brian, he could have pulled up the manifest. And this is when it would have triggered our integration to Metric, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But it created this manifest that if you're in a non-metric state, you can carry with you. So when you accept the product and you hit the road, you've got the manifest. And it even has the turn-by-turn instructions. If you're in a metric state, it would have created the metric manifest at this point. So Jennifer, why don't you talk a little bit, since you have much more hands-on experience, about when delivery tracking is appropriate, what the different state situations are for that, and how it's handled differently by state based on their rules.
Sure. So, when we first created this module, and this was even pre-integration to Metric days, we wanted to make sure that anybody using our software would be fully compliant. And we know how important the audit trail is as we're tracking the cannabis materials, and then even tracking that cash, as Sarah showed. So we definitely designed the system to ensure that we would have that traceability, which is what we saw. Now, when we integrate with Metric, a state track and trace system used in many states, as I'm sure you here attending probably know, we use that data that's generated, that vehicle data, that driver data, all of that stuff, so that we can send that data to Metric and provide those details that we need, so that we're not doing duplicate data entry, and we have audit trails in both systems. Or we might be in a state like Arizona that doesn't require you to use a state track and trace system, but they still require you to show that level of accountability and traceability. And so we have folks there who are using our manifest, like Sarah just popped up on the screen, which has all of the same data that any of the metric states that we've been in so far have required. So it's kind of like the best of all the states' worlds presented in one document. So we've definitely tried to make sure that no matter what happens, if there's a state track and trace system, and it goes down, technically you can still be compliant and continue to operate your business, and then catch up in that system when it comes back online, if that's something that we're allowed to do. So we really try to cover all the different scenarios that could possibly happen to keep people moving and compliant.
Awesome, thank you. I didn't mean to be changing screens while you were speaking, but I did want to change to our cultivation role center, mostly because it's nice eye candy. And let's talk a little bit about some of how we handle state compliance a little bit deeper. So I'm going to show you how we handle tags and where they get assigned, and then how we can search back through tags to find out what raw materials went into product. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Metric. So let's come back here. I'm now in our cultivation role center. And we'll talk about this in another webinar, but here I can see all kinds of information about what we're growing, doing in our grow right now. Because I thought it would be fun for you to see how we assign tags to plants too. So let's first talk about how we create the tags. If you're in a metric state or a non-metric state, you'll create the tags that you're, well, actually, you don't have to go through this process. Okay, let's start over. Sorry. Okay, let's go ahead and go into our CBC tags so we can see how we track the tags if you're in a metric state. And this is handled differently in biotrack states or if you're in a state that doesn't have metric. But basically, when you're in a metric state, you're going to buy tags from the state. And when you get those tags, you'll come into this process and say you want to generate new tags. You'll tell the system the location that you bought the tags for, what the type of tag is it a plant tag or package tag, and you can create your own types, and then what the starting number is and how many you got. So if you got 10,000 tags, boom, it'll go ahead and add them. So consider this your tally of all the tags. You'll notice for every tag, I have kind of some boring numbers and some exciting numbers. I have the liberty to create any sample data I want. But here you'll see for the tags we've used, we can identify what product is on that tag, what it is, how much we have left of that, and then we can always trace back to where it came from. So you'll never lose this data. You'll always have information about all your different tags. In our cultivation section, let's go in to see what mature plants we have growing right now. Here you'll see I have all these different plant batches that are growing. And if I open any one of them, here I can see in this batch, I have, again, it's kind of a small set of data, 5 plants, and here's the metric tags associated with them. So as I grow these plants or move them around or destroy them, our system's going to track everything. We have a destruction tracking, we track all the movements, and you'll always be able to see the footprint, so to speak, of your plants, of where they've been and where they are right now. So if an auditor ever comes in, you'll be able to quickly check and see where, pull up where the plant is, and you'll be able to, show that your records match reality. Another feature that I think is pretty exciting about Business Central and kind of our functionality is what we call the tag finder. And this is essentially our lot traceability, but a little bit deeper. So let's say you've sold a product to a customer and the customer has a complaint about that. So let's say the tag, they tell you the tag number. So I'm going to type in the tag they told us that had a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I always remember that tag number. So here's the tag that's missing. I'm sorry, it's not tag, it's PKG. Hang on. Okay, so this is the tag they had a complaint about. So I'm going to type in the tag and do search. And up pops, okay, this is the tag. I can see some information about it, what it was and who we sold it to. And in fact, now I can drill a little bit deeper. I can hit our navigate button. I can see the invoice about this tag. So if we open this invoice up, we can see what we sold it for, who we sold it to. So it was a 10-pack package of gummies that we sold Sweet Nectar. And from here, I can drill into the lot information card. And we can open that up. I can see the QC results associated with this batch. Now I happen to know my pack of 10 gummies inherits the QC result of the bulk gummies that I made. So I might have made a couple thousand gummies and then packaged them in packs of 10. And here I can see the QC results associated with that. But where it gets really fun, if you ask me, is I can come into item tracing. And from here, it quickly exploded. Let's compress some of this. So we know we sold this pack of 10, 2 packs of 10 to Sweet Nectar. As I explode it, I can see where it all came from. So in fact, these 2 packs of 10 came from a batch that had metric tag 08 on it, a batch of 40 packs of 10. So I made 40 packs of 10, put metric tag 08 on it, and then I pulled 2 of them off so I could sell it to Sweet Nectar. These packs of 10, the 40 packs of 10, came from a batch of bulk gummies that were on tag 7. I had produced 1,000 and I pulled 400 off onto tag 7. The batch of raw distillate that went into these bulk gummies was tag 06. I did things sequentially here. That's not really real world, but it's easier to follow that way. My crude oil that went into the raw distillate was tag 05. And ultimately, that crude oil came from this tag of bulk trim from my vendor. So now we might be wondering, okay, we know all the raw materials that went into it. We know who, we can find out, first of all, who else got this tag 08, because tag 08, it really was the same production run of these two. So I could trace to see who else got tag 08, and we know if we have to do a recall. Or I might realize maybe the problem was my bulk distillate. I can take this bulk distillate and go into trace the opposite direction. So now I can see who else got that bulk distillate and where else it might have gone. So here I can see it also went into Pineapple Express, some cartridges, wherever it went. I know it doesn't necessarily make sense, but we're able to trace from finished good to raw material and raw material to finished good. So that's a little bit about our tag finder and how you can get, see where things went, the whole chain of, I don't want to say chain of custody, the whole chain of raw material to finished good. Finally, of course, an important part of these tags is that metric integration. And I threw reference to it, and Jennifer referenced it a little bit. I thought we'd just spend the last few minutes talking about the metric integration and how that would really work. So Jennifer, would you like to speak about that again a little bit more?
Oh, sure. So what we have done with metric is anywhere that we are able to, we try to make it so that you don't have to do duplicate entry in both the Business Central ERP and in metric. So we have lots of integration points wherever metric allows us to have them. So when we receive inventory, when we I was going to say ship it, which is actually kind of true. We can create templates for manifest that then can be manifested in metric to help really reduce the data entry. When we do all those tag conversions that you just saw in the item tracing that Sara showed you, we can post that functionality in Business Central to say, okay, I consumed this and I output that, and that creates the related tag conversion in metric. If we do adjustments to inventory, when we destroy it, all of that integrates with metric. As we move through our cultivation process, we're able to create and change phases on plant batches and send that data to metric. So wherever possible, we have done that in order to help keep everything in line. And of course, there's always a reconciliation tool that we have at the end to make sure that the results of everything that we expect to have happened in both systems.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, our physical inventory reconciliation is a great tool. Yeah. Nothing worse than having two versions of the truth out there, right? We don't want to have that.
Thank you so much again for joining us for today's session. And if you did have questions, please submit those to insider@silverleafcbc.com. Let me poke back though. I wanted to let you guys know that part 4 of our 4-part series is on April 19th. If you are able to join us, we would love to have you on that session as well. Thank you again for taking time to join us.